Hey folks, David Stewart here. Let's talk about 2021. At least the plans that I have for me and for this channel in the year 2021. Last year I just kind of played it by ear, and it was kind of a good thing because it was so chaotic. It was pretty much an unpredictable year, which is fine for the fact that I wasn't trying to do a bunch of things and I didn't have like a list of things to do in that year. Well, this year I decided to do things a little bit differently and to really look ahead and do some planning and think about what I'm going to do this year. So first of all, for the channel, one of the things that I'm going to do is I'm going to do more story analysis and review, especially of anime series. And one of the things that I was able to do starting in 2020 was to watch more shows, and that was because I couldn't go to the gym. Couldn't go to the gym because the gym was closed, and then because I was sick and I was completely had like my cardio capacity obliterated. But I had bought this stationary bike before everything went down because I guess I had a little bit of foresight last year. I also haven't run out of toilet paper, which is nice. So I bought this exercise bike, and it's sitting in another room, and I could put up I have a cheap Android tablet, and I can watch some anime. I can watch one show and do my cardio workout, and that worked out really, really well for me, and is able to kind of get through a bunch of shows that you guys have suggested, and some of my other friends, my author friends, have suggested that they liked, and that's been a really good experience. And I want to talk about the things that I think were done really well, and to point out just a lot of the writing techniques that were going into these shows, because I feel like a lot of them did a really good job with the writing and with the storycraft elements in a way that I just don't see very much with Western shows. Western shows tend to be very focused on things that I find really predictable, but also very trivial. The style of a thing, attempts to make nihilistic themes have been the big thing in Western shows, and you just get tired of it. You just get tired of seeing, here's another show where everybody's bad, and none of the characters have any personality other than being bad. So with anime, you get a lot of different things there, and I think because it's a little bit removed from a culture, you have a different culture, but a culture that also looks out at the world and gets a lot of media from elsewhere in the world, and then does their own synthesis of it. I think that's really worth looking at. So I'm going to do a lot more anime review. If it's a series, I'll probably try to do 2 a month, because that's about as much as I can get through. And if it's a movie, maybe I'll throw an extra review in there, maybe on a weekly basis. So that's a big one. The other one is that I'm going to steal basically an idea from my friend Pete. He was like, I'm going to play all the Final Fantasy games in a row, in order. And that's what I'm going to do in 2021. I've been planning it for a while. I'm like, well, I'm just going to steal that. That's my idea now. But I thought it'd be really fun to do on stream and to talk about the game design that goes into Final Fantasy, starting with the first one on NES and then going all the way through the Final Fantasy 16 whenever that one comes out. So I was going to do them in order. I might break that order up when Final Fantasy 16 comes out in order to play that on stream and to do some analysis. That of course is going to be a rather hefty time investment, because as you get on with these, they tend to get a little bit longer, and they tend to be rather long, epic experiences, and that's part of the fun. Lots of people have nostalgia and attachment to some of the Final Fantasy games in the past, so I think as an adult, closer to 40 than 30 at this point, it would be really useful to go back and look at those things and reevaluate them as an adult and with different eyes. Starting with the original Final Fantasy, which I'm planning to play on stream, at least to begin. The NES version, I'll emulate it so we can play it on stream and look at it, rather than some of the newer versions. And I kind of have it planned out for which version I'm going to do of which game, and I'm not going to go into every single detail for that, but I'm going to start with NES. And like Final Fantasy II, there was no official Western release on NES, so you're either looking at a translation or you're looking at a later version like the Game Boy Advance version or one of the PlayStation versions. So I'll do a later version of that one. Final Fantasy III, I'm going to do the DS remake, and I think I'm going to do that for Final Fantasy IV as well, or I might do the SNES version. The problem with Final Fantasy IV is there's like 5 different translations and 5 different versions. There's so many different versions of some of these older Final Fantasy games because they get remade. They get remade in different ways. So Final Fantasy IV, there's the SNES version for America, which is the easy version from Japan. They released it in Japan as Final Fantasy IV, like easy or something. And so we got the easy version, but there's also a lot of things that change in the translation because of Nintendo of America's censorship. Then they remade it for the DS, which is a version that I really like, and then that's the PC version. So that would be actually the DS version, which adds a bunch of stuff like voiceovers and 3D graphics. And then there's another remake that is basically the same style but a little bit finer graphical presentation. I mean, there's so many remakes of this game, so I'm not going to go into every single one, but that's basically what we're going to do until we get up to about Final Fantasy VII, in which case there's less variants of the game to look at. For Final Fantasy IX, I can tell you that I'm going to do it on PC with the upscaling mod, the Maguri mod, which will give it a really sharp aesthetic presentation for 2021, which is great because that's actually one of my favorite Final Fantasy games. So that's what I'm planning for that. We'll get a sampling of a bunch of different versions and different presentations of the games, from 8-bit, the original 8-bit versions, 16-bit versions. I'm definitely going to play the SNES version of Final Fantasy VI, which I adore. That's just such a great game. And we'll go all the way up through Final Fantasy 16. Might break it up and play Final Fantasy 16 at release because I think that would be fun. And by the time we get to Final Fantasy 13, I might do it with Japanese voices or something because I've already played it with the English voices. I like the English voice cast, but it might be cool to do it different with Japanese voices for Final Fantasy 13. And I think I'm going to skip the MMOs. So I think Final Fantasy 11 and Final Fantasy 14 are going to get skipped. Some people will say you should play them anyway, just play through the story or play it as a single player game. And it's like, I might do that, I might not. I haven't made a firm decision, and I don't want to make everything set in stone. But the plan for the Final Fantasy games is do one more or less every month. The first couple ones you can get through more often, like quicker than a month, obviously. The original Final Fantasy game you can sit down and beat in a day if you want to, and not feel like it's too much of a time commitment. It's like playing a Zelda game or something. But as you go forward until you get to like Final Fantasy 13, which is like 12 hours of cutscenes, and then like 50 hours of gameplay or something like that. That's a much bigger time commitment. So I'm going to try to be more consistent about streaming, and I haven't set up a streaming schedule really firmly yet, but I'm going to try to do that so that people can have some predictability with that. It just hasn't really been possible in 2020 because of the unpredictability of my own schedule and young children that don't go to bed on time and all sorts of things like that. So that's what I'm looking forward to doing. In general, my approach to 2021 is looking at defined time and limited scope. So one of these things that you have to think about is if you are going to define how long you're going to do something or how much time it's going to take to do something, you have to have your process really down. I talk about this in the Keys to Prolific Creativity. You have to design your process to meet how much you're trying to do and how much time you're trying to do. And it's a little bit easier if you just can let go of one of those, like, I'm going to do less, and I'm going to do this for a month, and I'm going to do less. For me, I just need to make sure that my scheduling is sufficient, and I'll be able to get through however long it takes to get through a game. That's how long it takes to get through it. So, might be a little faster for the first game, might be a little bit slower for the later games in the series, and to do the analysis of them. But I'm going to try to keep a consistent schedule, at least for like the analysis stuff. I will also do a little bit of Star Wars content. I'll break my ban on Star Wars content that I did in 2020. And I'll do some stuff on The Mandalorian because people want me to talk about that. And frankly, I owe it to you. And also I want to do Return of the Jedi and get that kind of done. And then of course, we probably won't do more Star Wars content for a while because there won't be that much to watch. So, do books or something like that. So I'll evaluate that as we go. I have a lot of stuff planned for January, in that respect. Moving on past that, books. So next book that I want to release is the third Moonsong book. It's already written. I wrote it a long time ago. It's one of my earlier books, so it needs a lot of revision. But I'll be able to get that done, I think, this month, and hopefully I'll be able to have that release sometime after this month, like February. I don't know if I want to push it into March because that's a long time without another book, but I'll get those files prepped. And I basically have a schedule worked out to get a couple of the books that I've already written out in time, because I have to do, obviously, publication material. I got to design book covers and set all that kind of stuff up, which takes time. So I have a schedule for books that will come out. You will get the Eternal Dream. We're doing fantasy. 2021 is all about fantasy. So we're doing Eternal Dream 3 will come out. The sequel to Crown of Sight, or really the next book in the series, which each of them has very different characters, but they tell kind of classic mythological and tragic sorts of stories. It's a tragedy, and that one will come out prior to the third Eternal Dream book. So we're going to have Moonsong 3, Eternal Dream 3. We're going to have the Eternal Dream Legends 2. I also want to come out with a book I don't want to talk about just yet, but I wrote it a while back and I just have sat on it, and I think I just need to put it out. I need to put it out there and see what people think about it. It's another fantasy book, and it's technically in the same universe, but just in the even further distant past. It's a mythological kind of past for that my little fantasy universe. So that's really what 2021 has in store, and I will hopefully be able to have time during one of those breaks to write the follow-up to Voices of the Void for you horror fans, and I will have an additional horror book coming out this year as well, but that will happen a little bit later as the year goes on. I feel like coming out with tragedy and stuff, that's why I've sat on these books. It just didn't feel right for 2020. I wanted to do things that were more fun, so I'm going to have some time to do those in 2021. So thanks so much. That's the plan. So gaming stuff is I'm gonna try to play through all the Final Fantasy games. I might get to other games too, and basically as time allows. But that's the one that I'm gonna fix. Is like I'm gonna try to get through all of these Final Fantasy games and do analysis of all of them as well. So we'll stream them, and then we'll do some additional content on them as well. So thanks so much, guys, and I'll see you next time. Make sure you're on my mailing list, dvspress.com/list, to stay up on book releases and also to get a free book, and probably free books as I release them. I tend to give away a lot of books from time to time, so you'll probably get some free stuff. Check it out, dvspress.com/list, and I'll see you guys next time.